second scripture reading for this morning is in the 13th chapter of the Gospel according to Matthew, picking up with the 24th verse. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from?" He answered, "An enemy has done this." The slaves said to him, "Then do you want us to go and gather them?" But he replied, "No, for in gathering the weeds you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn." He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed in with 3 measures of flour until all of it was leavened. May God's blessing rest upon the experiences of Scripture on this morning, the meditations of our hearts, and the words of my lips. God bless the parables. Right? Like saying, bless your heart. Your little pointy head. Parables can be a challenge in their own way just because of the nature of the conversation we're having. The Greek tells us that a parable is something cast alongside. Right? So we have the thing itself, and then it's kind of like this. Parable. And we know that Jesus, like many other teachers of his day and time, would use this parable. Like many preachers of my day and time would use parables to try to help us understand something that is not like the thing that we're talking about at all. Or maybe it is like it in some way. And that's the key to understanding parables, is that it's not the thing itself. We can turn them into allegories, and sometimes we get quite a bit when we bring them into that allegorical place. And Scripture will even unpack parables for us. But when Jesus is teaching in parables, it's not just the allegory. We find if we keep going back to them over and over again, there will be, new and different things that come up. So here is a package of 3 parables. To be honest, this should be a sermon series that's at least, 9 weeks long to unpack 3 parables. But I don't have that kind of time. I'm figuring maybe 10 minutes or so should be enough, right? Because when Matthew gives us parables that Jesus tells, Matthew is understanding that the parables were offered because there were people who already were open to receiving what it was that Jesus was doing. And for them, the parable will add clarity. And then there were others who had already decided to reject what it was that Jesus was doing. And for those folks, the parable would not add any clarity at all. It would not convince them differently. It would just sort of further cloud their understanding. That's a little off-putting, but that seems to be how Matthew understands Jesus using parables. For those who are on the inside, who have already opened their hearts and minds, the parable will be crystal clear. And for those that have already rejected what Jesus is doing, the parable will just be another collection of words. I struggle with that because the parables are not clear to me. And yet I don't reject them out of hand. So I don't see myself in either camp. That seems to be how Matthew, and maybe he's helping his community wrestle with the question of why aren't more people responding? Why aren't more people showing up? Because this is good news that's being preached. And so Matthew, when he's putting together his gospel, is bringing in parables and saying, well, see, some people get it and some people don't. It's just sort of the way it is right now. And so we've got three parables then that are supposed to, if we are open to what is God is already doing through Jesus, help us understand the realm even more. Now, in the first service, I decided to focus on the wheat and the tares. I didn't do everything I wanted to with the wheat and the tares, but I'm not going to do that this time. I think I want to focus on the leaven. I like bread. You know, these are three parables about food, so it's in my wheelhouse anyway. I think I want to focus on the leaven. It's a short little parable. It's a short little story that Jesus offers here about this woman who is working leaven into the yeast. And leaven is all over the place in Scripture. We run across leaven quite a bit. In fact, even in Matthew's Gospel, Jesus says you need to watch out for the leaven of the Pharisees. So leaven seems to have a negative connotation. And perhaps that's why Jesus is using this parable to tell us something about the realm of God, because who can describe what God is doing in our inadequate language? It's kind of like this. And folks are like, oh, it's like leaven. That doesn't sound right, because we know from everywhere else that leaven isn't a positive thing when it's used in this way, and yet we also know, because we eat bread, that leaven is special. Leaven is magical. And leaven isn't, in this case, the pack of yeast that I will use, a little jar of yeast that lives in my refrigerator that I scoop out and rapidly produces the dough. This is like sourdough starter. And when I read that, I said, ooh, I like sourdough, but I don't know anything about sourdough starters, so I had to go do research on sourdough starters. And you know what? There's a lot of work involved in sourdough starters. You're constantly feeding them and tending to them. But that's what yeast was like, because it was a wild yeast that people were using. And so when Jesus says that this woman, who is doing the work that women did in that day and time, doing what is expected to produce, to provide, she is taking something that has already had a lot of work put into it to get it to this place. It's not as if the yeast magically appeared. It's not a pack that you can add a little more water to and all of a sudden, boom, yeasty goodness all over the place. No, bread yeast smells wonderful. No, this is something that she's been tending. And there'll be stories of sourdough starters that are going back generations. But you have to tend them. You have to keep working on it. So here's this thing, this everyday thing that the realm of God is like. And the first thing we find out, or I found out, is there's work involved before we even get to the point of telling the story. Before we even get to the point of making bread, there's work tending the starter. And then she takes it, and some translations say that she hid it. She hid it. And that's actually maybe a little more accurate to the Greek. She hid the leavening. Now, if it's like powdered yeast, I can see you doing that. We would do this thing that kids in here. No, I don't want to spoil it in case I do it later. We would do this thing at camp where we would get like the glass pitcher, and you would put the Kool-Aid mix and then the sugar on top so you can't see the Kool-Aid mix, and then you would add water and it would turn into grape Kool-Aid or whatever red is. It's red Kool-Aid. I don't know, is there a flavor with it? Cherry. There we go, cherry. Red Kool-Aid, and it's like, oh, and it could be because it's turning water into Kool-Aid. It's not quite a miracle, but it's close to it. It's hidden in there. But this isn't the same sort of thing because it's the starter. We all know that when we're using the sourdough starter, you're going to see it. There's no hiding it in there. But and yet, the term hide is used. It was worked in. It's mixed into this flour. It's a lot of work making bread. There's a lot of sort of, great triceps making bread, kneading it, working it, and getting to that place, making sure the leaven is all the way through it. There's a lot involved in this. It's not just a matter of sort of lifting up a bunch of flour and throwing it in and dropping it down and poof, you've got bread. Even if you're using a bread mixer, I've got a KitchenAid. In the first 6 months I had it, we had a thing at church. I made 150 yeast rolls. And a third of the way through the process of making them in several batches, I lost the bottom 3 gears on it. And so it was like all or nothing with that mixer. Flour was everywhere. There's work involved in making bread. And so when Jesus gives us these 3 lines, he's saying, it's like, well, it's like the leaven that she just sort of hit in there. Everyone understands. Everyone, especially the women in the crowd who are hearing this, understand how about Jesus is not just a matter of trying it in there. No. There is work involved. There was the work in having the leaven ready, and then there was the work in mixing it in. And those who were farming, those who were tending to the fields with the wheat, no, it's not just a matter of having the flour available to you. There was work involved in getting to the place of having the flour, and all of that effort is coming together. And now we're working the dough, and we're making sure that leaven, that sourdough starter, is going through. And sourdough starter is actually fantastic because the acid that is built up in there is a natural preservative. That's why the bread that I make that doesn't have it goes bad so quickly. Whereas a sourdough will last for a week or two on the counter without a problem. It's the acid that's in it. So all this happening. And then you leave it, right? And we know what happens when you leave it. It starts to grow. It starts to expand. It's as if there's this thing inside of it that people don't understand. We don't know how or why it works. Well, we do nowadays because of science. But at that point in time, it was just you put the leavening in there, and something happens, and it grows. The realm of God is like this thing that's going to grow. It's going to expand. Ooh, and it smells so good doing it. It smells so good. And then we get to divide it up, and we get to bake it off, and we get to share it, right? So the realm of God is like this event that's taking place, and in 3 lines, it captures everything else that's going on around it, the prep work, and everything else that goes into it. And then this work that people don't take any part in at all, this sort of seemingly magical bit, when there's all this growth that takes place, and there's the partitioning, and there's the baking off, and there's all the effort that goes into baking it off and getting it right, and then there's bread, and we're fed. Realm of God feeds. Oh, saints be praised. We have all of that. And then there's something else. Because Jesus only gives us a few lines talking about this thing, but he mentions specifically 3 measures of flour. Now, when I make bread, I might use somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 cups-ish of flour. And I say ish because I use non-standard measurements. Like, that looks good. 3 measures would have pulled a string in the memory of the people gathered around, because there were times when 3 measures comes up in Scripture when the strangers came to Abram and Sarai to proclaim the gift of a child. Abram runs in and says, quick, make some cakes. And she grabbed 3 measures of flour. Now, Abram and the 3 guests, 3 measures of flour is somewhere between 40 and 60 pounds of flour. this individual that Jesus talks about in the parable, the realm of God is like this, is producing an overabundance, an incredible abundance, more than one person or one household, or perhaps even one community in that day, give us this day our daily bread, in that day could eat. The realm of God is an overabundance. So Jesus packs all of this and so much more into a short parable that is connected to other parables that reveal to us something of the realm. But for us on this day, in this one parable, I would say the good news is this. The work has been happening. God has been at work and we have been at work. We are in the moments that we are in right now. And we know that because it is the work of the realm, something magical is going to happen. And there will be an overabundance of blessing when it is all done. That is part of being church today. Thanks be to God